I was 17 when I left with them, so to me, the music world was everything. I couldn't believe that I was a part of it. I'm on the bus heading for the next gig. If I couldn't do that, then I didn't want to be even alive. It was a rock scene. It was all about drugs and girls, rock and roll and drinking and partying. It looked good to me until he didn't. There's no one knocking on my door to come play now. 20,000 in the hole. I don't know how I lived through any of that. I'd OD almost every other day, it seems like. I was gone. 1 more ounce of coke, you've got to stop. 1 more ounce of meth, you've got to stop. My lights were out at the house. It was winter, out of food. And my parents were dead. My brother was dead. And my teeth were falling out. I was homeless, living under a bridge for I don't know how long. And I wasn't going to live like that. But I had picked out a bridge that I was going to jump off in front of a train. I wanted to go some direction, but I had nothing to go to in any direction. So no teeth, and I'm worthless. I felt I'd let him down and everybody else down. And I was praying to God that this is the day. You either need to save me, show me something, or I'm done. My dad was a federal man. My mother and him met in college and they got married. I think they were together about a year before they got married. And had my brother. He's 3 years older than I am, and then I came along, and I was just very safe and protected and loved by them. I couldn't say by all my family. I think I was a pretty obnoxious kid, but by them. And they were, I was just real protected. It was a real safe childhood. I've got so many addict friends and I've heard testimonies and, the traumatic childhood that they had. And I mean, it's like you can see where their drug addiction came from or alcoholism or whatever the case is. And I don't have that. I had a great childhood. I was loved. My parents were solid. They didn't drink. They didn't do drugs. My dad was, like I say, a Fed. He was the youngest federal chief appointed at the time in the United States at 29.
Wow.
And I found out years later, it's a whole nother story, that he was actually in prison for robbing banks in California before that. So it's quite a story. His testimony would be quite a testimony. Unfortunately, it doesn't involve God, but he was not a Christian. My mother had my brother and I in church, Presbyterian church, since the time I was born till I was probably, 11, somewhere in that area. And Dad never went, but Mom would have us at church every Sunday. And Presbyterian church is very different from the church that I got saved in later on in life and where I go now. And they're Pentecostals, probably the opposite end of the spectrum from them. But it was, for me, it was actually, I would say, the most important part of my childhood, because when God tells us that, to raise them up and they will return,
Yeah.
It's true, because I just knew Jesus was real, just like I knew my mom and dad were real and my brother was real and anybody was real. As a child, you can see why Jesus said, "Come to me as a child," and because you just believe him. So I later on turned away from that as a child, but up until I was 11 or 12, I prayed by myself in my room. I prayed. I'm so grateful my mother had us in church and she taught Sunday school, and because I did return to that, and I had you want that kind of faith in your life as you go through life. As a child, because it was just a complete and total belief. I had no doubt who Jesus was and that he was real and that he heard me. And I would pray all kinds of things, childish things, I'm sure, but don't let my mom and dad die or my brother die or, whatever. But I believed he was hearing me, and of course he was. And then in that, the religiosity, I would say, of the church drove me away from wanting to be a Christian. I just was, and nothing against our Presbyterian brothers and sisters. There's so many denominations. We have to all, find our own, work out your own salvation. And that's, I'm not trying to be divisive, because I love that that's where I did. But when I got a little bit older, I remember making a conscious decision. They were so, I don't even know the word to use, but not maybe judgmental, but seemed everything was a ritual, and you had to be so on point, or there was no room for error, or quiet and church, and everybody seemed to really, it was very disciplinarian and not a free-going church. There was, if you raised your hand in that church, they would have probably thought you were nuts. I mean, they just wouldn't have, there was no, wasn't that kind of freedom. So because of what I considered anyway as a child, as these people are boring. They are, I just couldn't believe they were always on me about everything. I couldn't move, I couldn't talk, I couldn't do anything. And I was a very, probably what you'd call a tough kid to love, because I was very high, before ADD was ever a term, but I was ADHD on steroids as a child. And so that church and that particular upbringing, just, I just thought, I'm not going to be like these people. I want my life to be a big adventure. Adventure would be the biggest. I always have seen my life as an adventure, and they just seem to be. So my childhood was wonderful, but as far as my church and that kind of thing, and I was confused because my dad didn't believe, and he was at home, and I admired my dad and looked up to him, and he came, like I say, from a interesting place himself, from the wrong side of the law to be what he was, and he raised me to be very honest, and which I wasn't, but he raised me to be, and his example certainly was as to treat people equally, and he was a servant. He was a chief probation officer down there, but he never used that term. When somebody would ask him what he did for a living, he would say, "I'm a public servant." And so I looked up to him, and I just, decided to go another route. I just made that decision when I was little. I don't want to be like them. I want to have fun.
Pretty early?
Yeah, pretty early. I'd say 12. By the time I was 11, I had decided that Christian thing is not for me. I want to live life. I want to have fun. I want to do the fun stuff, which I didn't even know what that meant at the time, but I knew that it wasn't with them. Of course, it's what I believed at the time, just being little and immature. And so I was, like I say, I was always in trouble. I wasn't a good student. I was in trouble all the time. But I was always protected. My mother she shielded me. My big brother was just the perfect big brother. He always dragged me along with him wherever he went. He actually enjoyed having me with him, and because I was in trouble so much, my dad was the disciplinarian, and he was a great dad. I mean, just a wonderful dad. Taught me so many good values to this day that, as it turns out, are many of our Christian values also. But just values, but he didn't spare the rod, that's for sure. Not on me. He never spanked my brother, but I got it a lot, and he would blister me good. And my brother he was just a real protective brother. I mean, I'd be in trouble at school, and my dad would tell them to call him if I get in trouble. And they wanted to give licks back then, so I'd get paddled. And then when I get home, I'd have to wait all day, knowing when Dad gets home, the belt's coming out. And, when you're, torture to do that. And he'd come home and do that. But so I had good discipline, or he tried, but they didn't know that my kind of personality, I think, I didn't want to be in trouble. I wasn't trying to be in trouble. I just couldn't shut up and couldn't quit moving. I couldn't. Mm-hmm. And my brother was very protective and patient with me, and my mom was the same, and my dad wasn't as much as, he thought that he could, maybe not spare the rod so much, and maybe it would straighten me around. I say that about him, but I don't want him in a bad light, because he was doing what he really thought he needed to straighten me out. And I mean, like I say, he never spanked my brother because he was a straight A student and never in trouble, scared to death of my dad, and he never got touched by him. I was not scared of my dad, and I got beat by him all the time. I got my rear pounded. But I would challenge him at every turn. He'd say something, I'm just gonna buck up on it. And so he was doing what I would do too if I had a kid doing that. My parents they didn't fight a lot. You didn't hear a bunch of fighting. I just didn't have a traumatic childhood other than the trouble I brought on myself.
What part of the world was that?
We were in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, is where I was born, in Tulsa, and then we moved to Broken Arrow, got an acreage out there, and started raising quarter horses and racing horses, and were there until my brother went to college, and I was 14, I guess, till I was in 9th grade, and moved me to Skiatook, where he bought a bigger farm, more horses. We just upgraded and got a bigger place, and started with thoroughbreds and quarter horses, which was a whole new era in life when you leave all your friends behind. And at that age, everybody and their dog wanted to fight me, and I would fight. I mean, I'm not going to run from anybody. I didn't like it. Not like I was looking. But that started a whole new part of my childhood there. Kind of left my childhood behind in Broken Arrow, and was forced to face a little more. For the first time, I was the outsider. In Broken Arrow, I knew everybody. I mean, I've been there most of my life and knew everybody. And I was, I knew it didn't matter who it was. I knew them or grew up with them or had some. I fought a lot there. I fought all my life. I've always been in fights. I actually always thought it was fun. I loved to fight. I didn't like picking them. I never was a bully, but I would. If somebody picked on one of my friends or challenged me, which happened plenty, then I was just one of those kids that liked to fight. I thought it was exhilarating, and usually, honestly, the guys that I grew up fighting ended up my best friends.
Right.
Those are the guys that to this day we laugh about our meeting behind the gym and bloodying each other to a pulp, and then spending the night with me that night. That's how I met them. That's where we met. So, but I was like that. But in Skiatook, it took on a little different meaning, just because it wasn't. I didn't have anybody, any friends.
Yeah.
There wasn't a one in town. I didn't have a single friend, and they all came at me one after another. Picking a fight and meet me after the gym in the park after school or whatever. So it was a whole new deal, and that's not why I started experimenting with drugs, but things picked up at that point. In Broken Arrow it was, but like I said, I didn't have a childhood that caused me to do drugs. Drugs looked fun to me.
Yeah.
It was just that they just looked fun, and they were fun at the time. I mean, when you're young, it was a lot of mushroom. I started smoking weed probably around 12, and stealing parents' liquor, or not mine because they didn't drink, but people would. I mean, that's that kind of childish stuff. But smoking weed, drinking beer, and I guess short. I mean, it progressed quickly, but into like mushrooms and pills and that kind of thing. What I would call hard drugs didn't come until really after high school. I mean, a lot of LSD was big back then, a lot of acid, all kinds of acid and mushrooms and weed and drinking. And we used to have, I don't see it anymore, but they called it tea, which was a powder form of THC. I think it was really just PCP, but we thought it was, they'd call it tea to sell it, whoever they are. Mm-hmm. And we'd get that, and that was the first time I ever did anything that really just took you into another realm, and I liked that, so I just kind of started chasing it. So childhood was great, and really the reasons I started didn't seem like they were for an escape, except I was always in trouble, and I didn't do good in school, and I was compared to my brother, and so I kind of just grabbed the rebellion by its horns and just decided to rebel, and I did. If you weren't supposed to do it, I wanted to be involved, and my poor parents, that's kind of how my life went.
Yeah.
I got in trouble and got shipped off to a military academy. So I was in high school, I was in a military academy. I graduated from Wentworth Military Academy in Lexington, Missouri. But music had come into my life when I was, I don't know, I was probably third grade, maybe something like that. And my brother was playing guitar, and I wanted to play drums, so my parents got me a little drum set, and it just seemed to me like I could just play them. And I just thought, well, this is kind of dumb. Anybody can do this. And, you know, as I found, my friends thought that was really cool, and they couldn't do it at all. And it was weird to me that they couldn't do that. I'm like, what are you playing to? They weren't even close to what was going on. So it seemed like a real natural fit for me, and I just fell in love with drums. And I mean, really, music played a central role in my life from the time I was little. My brother was a songwriter and a singer, and we were, you know, he'd bring his guitar, and he had a big old Vox amp, a great big amp back then. He'd come in my room and set up by my drums, and we'd just play loud rock all night. Ended up in country music as a living, but at the time it was that. So it was a real bonding thing between me and my brother. I just loved music. So music was an interest from the time I was little, and it never went away. And you know, girls in the neighborhood would come and want to watch me play in my bedroom, and I just thought, this is the best thing that ever happened. So I was probably wanting to play for the wrong reasons, but it was just between the girls and right off the bat, early on, the interest that it showed, and so that never left me. I stayed. I got in a few little bands in like junior high, and I don't think in high school I was ever really in a band. Just doing high school stuff, and then got in a lot of trouble and got sent to Wentworth. I just started, like I said, I really rebelled. If it was, you weren't supposed to rob houses, then I was going to go rob houses. So, you know, steal cars, do whatever. I just did stuff that was exciting to me, and it was all on the wrong side of the law. And unfortunately for me, my dad was somebody in a position where he could keep me out of being in real bad trouble. He knew all the judges, he knew everybody. We went to dinner parties with every federal judge in Oklahoma and elsewhere. And he worked closely with all the governors, and he knew our governor. So, I was always a phone call away from, and I think I knew that. I think that was part of my thought pattern, was that I don't know if entitled is the word, but certainly I can do a lot, and Dad will take care of it. And he did. He did do that until he didn't, and until Wentworth. At that time, I had gotten in a lot of trouble, and the judge said, I'm sure he had made this deal with the judge in the background to send me off to a military academy, but the judge is the one that ordered it. But I'm sure Dad is the one that came up with the idea that him to order it. I don't know how it went, but something like that. So I got sent out of, so I wasn't playing music, it wasn't there, and that was just a whole nother world of, you know, military academies, very, you know, you're either there for being in a lot of trouble, or you're real rich, and you can, I mean, we had princes, and, you know, it was filled with all kinds of, you know, extremely wealthy people. That's where you graduate. That's what you do in that family. And mine was just, it wasn't the extremely wealthy family, and I definitely was there because I was in trouble, but our family could afford it, so it was, you know, I fit in, I guess, well enough there, but I fought and fought and fought. I got beat up by my lieutenant, by my sergeant, because I just wasn't gonna, you weren't gonna tell me to do push-ups, and you're not telling me anything, and they did, that's what they do. And they beat it out of me eventually. I mean, the first few months I was there was difficult. It was just, I wasn't gonna listen to, why would I listen to some guy my age telling me to drop and do push-ups at his feet? That's just ridiculous, that ain't gonna happen. But they finally did, it did happen, and it was real good for me to go there, and I enjoyed Wentworth once I got kind of acclimated to it. And it was good, but I mean, I smoked weed, you know, it was just a bunch of kids that we all did the same thing. So, I mean, we did drugs there. You just have to be real. I got in trouble for that quite a bit. And, but I didn't know at the time, but when your parents are donating money to the play, they're not going to kick you out of there. Of course, they threaten you with it constantly, because I was always in trouble for being stoned, and my eyes would be stoned. And when we go sit at dinner, you have to sit like this at attention until they tell you at ease, and then you can drop your hands and eat. And I look up and my first sergeant, who's just a hardcore by the book sergeant, was sitting right across from me, and my eyes were just bloodshot red. And so he kind of, when that meal was over, I got called to into his office, and he beat me down. I mean, I had to stand at attention while he really got into it. So I was a little, you know, just, they got me in line with discipline where I had never been before. Because it was always my dad disciplining me before, and now it was a whole school full of people with authority over me that beat me down. So it was a real good place for me. It was when I got out of there, my parents thought on a real good track. It kind of straightened me up, and it did, sort of, but you know, it didn't really. So my interests were still drugs, still getting high. My dad, I was a pilot, so I took flying lessons, and you know, I was a horrible pilot because I just wanted to be high and be up around the clouds, and it's fun flying a Cessna 150 through the clouds when you're stoned. So I was a horrible pilot, and I'd get lost. But I mean, that was kind of my mindset. So my interests were like any boy's interests, girls, and you know, Wentworth doesn't allow for that much because there's no girls there. But so that was, my music was still always my interest, but it was put on hold while I was there. Mm-hmm. And going through that time of my life was definitely an eye-opener. But it was good.
So, where did life take you after Wentworth?
Well, I came back to Tulsa, and I got enrolled at NEO, A&M. It was close enough that my dad wasn't going to put me in, like my brother went to TU, but it's a real expensive school, and he wasn't going to put me there anywhere like that because he knew me. And let's go see if you even stay for a while. And I think I went to one semester. I don't remember if I finished the first year. I think one semester, maybe after the first year, and it was summer break. It was probably that. I went back to Tulsa and I was staying at Sigma Nu at TU with my brother. And like I say, music was everything to me. It's just all I wanted. And he took me to a place called Whiskers in Tulsa. Everybody in town was talking about this band Sweetbriar and being at this deal. So I went and I struck it up with the sound man and started getting along good with them. And by the end of the week, I was gone on the road with them. I just left with them. I said, hey, I wanted to be the light. Let me be the light man, because I wasn't on stage yet at that point. And me and Barry he's one of my best friends to this day. They were the perfect band for a crazy kid to end up getting in with, because they again sheltered me and took care of me. I was the baby of that band, and everybody taught me how to act to fans, and how to, later what they taught me would really come in handy, because it really reflected on how I treated our fans when we actually started doing bigger things. And so I called Mom and Dad and told them I was living in Dallas. And they said, what do you mean in Dallas? They thought I was at Sigma Nu with Charlie. And I told Charlie I'm going on the road with them. He said, well, you better tell Mom and Dad. And I said, I'll tell them later. Just if they call, just, whatever, tell them I'm running around or something. So I called Mom and Dad about 2 weeks later, I guess, from Dallas, told them I was living there, and they were on the first plane there. Came out to see us at a big club we were playing in Dallas, and Dad just said, well, yeah, okay, if this is what you're going to do, because I wasn't coming home. They would have had to drag me home. I couldn't believe how awesome to me, the music world was everything. Nothing, if I couldn't be a musician or at least in the field in some way, even some of my best memories, even of all the playing that I've gotten to do, was being a light man with that band. It was fantastic. Just the whole atmosphere. I never saw I couldn't believe that I was a part of this. I get to, I'm on the bus heading for the next gig every night or every other night or wherever. I'm just constantly on the road, and the attention, and that it was just so exciting to me that if I couldn't do that for a living, then I didn't want to be even alive. I just couldn't even imagine it. I remember flying out of Tulsa to go to Dallas, and I flew up over the early morning rush hour, and we got up over the highway, and I looked at those cars just lined up from downtown Tulsa all the way out to Broken Arrow on that deal, and I just was so unbelievably grateful that I'm on this plane heading for Dallas, and one of my guys is going to pick me up, and we're getting on the road and hitting it in music. The whole thing, the whole scene was a rock scene, and it was back in the 70s, so it was all about drugs and girls and, rock and roll and drinking and partying, and but it looked good to me, and I absolutely loved it. So I didn't go to college very long, but I came from Wentworth, did go to college, and then I got on the road with that band, and I got my first taste of what it was like to be out on the road.
What was the name of that band again?
Sweetbriar.
Sweetbriar. Mm-hmm. And you were 19, 18, 19?
I was 17 when I left with them. And I've got pictures somewhere of a picture of when I was first with them, and I was just a skinny little kid. So they took me under their wing and did good with me and kept me safe, at least. And Mom and Dad, when they flew down, they knew they weren't going to talk me out of doing this, and they really liked everyone in the band. I asked the band, man, y'all really put a good show on for Mom and Dad, because otherwise they're going to drag me home, and they did. They were real good about it, and they were all quite a bit older than, not all of them, but we had like Reverend Horton Heat. If you're a rockabilly person, if you're into that world, he's world famous now. He was our guitar player. He was my roommate. And so I got introduced to, we were working with like Stevie Ray Vaughan and it wasn't just, a crummy little rock band. I mean, these guys were talented. It was really an introduction that would be, to really, you wouldn't think that a kid's just going to walk into that, but I did. And that was my introduction to everything. So I didn't want to leave that lifestyle, but they were old enough more than me that they could convince mom and dad they'll take good care of me on the road, and they did, as best they could. I mean, that's where I really found drugs and learned to really started getting out there then, but still nothing like what was to come.
Yeah.
Pretty petty stuff compared to what was coming.
Yeah.
But it was the introduction. So music was off and running at that point in my life, and one way or the other, I was going to be in music.
Yeah. So what was next in your life?
Well, I toured with them we were on the road for, I guess, the next, 2 to 3 years, and I got done with the band broke up, and I went back to Tulsa and didn't know what to do with myself, really. I think we probably went 2 years, because I think I was 21 when I met my first wife. And I didn't know, my mom has 17 brothers and sisters, and like 13 of them are doctors, and they started the osteopathic hospital in Tulsa. Now it's OSU Medical Center. But my uncle was the founder of that hospital, so I didn't know what to do with myself. Like I said, if I wasn't going to be doing music and I didn't see any music coming again at that moment, I was just depressed. I was really just heartbroken that this had ended so quick. I mean, it was just all going so good and then ended, and now my parents are riding me about, okay, you need to do this, nothing sounded good. I didn't want to do anything. So they ended up having me go to the lab at the hospital, and I got trained to be a phlebotomist and work in the lab, and I loved it. I ended up loving that just because of the patients, and you get to be a part of patient care, and I didn't know that I'd like that, but I did. And so I did that. My first wife's dad was the administrator of the hospital, and my uncle was the chief of staff. So we were the two kids that got planted in the lab. We didn't have to get hired. We didn't get, so people kind of resented, but they put on it was like Peyton Place. It was a soap opera. When we'd come into the room, they would stop talking, and that kind of thing. And then we started dating each other, and you're not supposed to. They frowned on you dating in the same department, but it was like, well, what are we going to say to them? Their folks run the place, and so it was. I met her there, and I worked there. I think maybe not very long, year, something like that, and got married. And that was a disaster, but got married and did that, and I think we were married 2 years. And towards the second year of our marriage, my brother had asked me if I wanted to play drums, play in the studio on a country record that we were getting attention from. His songwriting was getting a lot of attention at that point. He's 3 years older than I am. He was a cop in Tulsa at that time, and he was getting attention from national attention from people and from a lot of stars of the day, and asked me if I wanted to do that, but I thought country music was just, I couldn't even imagine doing that. I want to leave a pile of sawdust when I play, not tee-tee-tee-tee-tee-tee, and turns out I didn't that at all, but that's how I thought of it. So he talked me into doing this country record with him, but I was back in music, and with my brother. So very excited about it, and it took off. It just was, we had 3 songs chart in Billboard magazine in the top 100 in '83 and '84, and we had been playing around Tulsa and just getting ready and a lot of rehearsal, and all of a sudden we had, Hank Estel Bogart, our bass player, came from Hank Williams Jr., and we had Frank Brown come from, he played with the band out in LA, Rick Danko, and those guys are, they're from the, you know who the band is if you do?
I've heard of them.
Yeah, well, you'd know their stuff. But I mean, these guys are all people that I admired and looked up to, and this is my first time to really be the guy on stage, the drummer, and instead of working behind the scenes. So we had this incredible band come together, and all of a sudden we're in Billboard, and George Strait's wanting us to come open with him and work with him, and I mean, everybody started calling. It's like we went from zero to, I was working at JCPenney and getting a divorce from my first wife, and then all of a sudden this all hit, and it just came real quick. It seemed like it was real quick, and the next thing I know, we were working in some capacity, whether it was opening up for or playing with or in the studio with. I mean, everybody, Ronnie Mills, everybody who was anybody at that time, we were with them. And we were in Nashville at, Fanfare, and having, being invited to all the things that the public can't go to, where everybody comes off tour and gets together, and you just get to meet every star there is, the biggest stars in the world, and we're all there in one group. It's only us and the bands, and it's no fans, nobody's allowed in there. So we got into that circle, and I just remember walking in, and Barbara Mandrell and the Mandrell sisters, who were huge at the time. Mm-hmm. A lot of younger people watching this won't have any clue who that is, but they were, I mean, I had them and Ricky Skaggs on one side, and, it was just a star-filled room, and for a guy who's starry-eyed and that's your dream come true, it was quite a place to find myself at that. I still was only 22 or something. It's young still, 23 maybe. And so we were off and running. We were just off in the music business and getting all that attention. We did a record with Ronnie Dunn from Brooks and Dunn, and we did a bunch of stuff. And I think that it came so fast and it seemed so easy to me. I mean, I just completely took the sex, drugs, and rock and roll part of it as that's what I want my adventure to be, instead of focusing on making good music. And that's the path I started taking. And that's a disastrous path when that's all you do. And so we did a lot in a 3 or 4 year period. We were just working with everybody and doing really well. And then, drugs just started. I found cocaine early on in that and started shooting up. And it was just then it went from recreational fun use to full-blown addict. I didn't care. I mean, music was more just in my way at that point. I would do sound check at 3 o'clock, and I would lock my dressing room door. And I mean, just, the road managers and the managers and the band, everybody's pounding on my door. I'd get up and do sound check, try to stay sober enough, clean enough I could do that, but I'd have cocaine and needles hidden in my dressing room, and I'd tell them I'm sick on the toilet, and for 5 hours till showtime, and I wouldn't come out of there. And when I did come out, I was a mess. It was horrible when I think back on those times. It was just throwing a career down the tubes, and everybody watching me do it, and it was sad. It was just a sad thing. Cocaine had just that kind of a obsession with something takes over everything. I mean, it just took over everything. I didn't care about anything anymore except being high. And if I could get the right combination in me, like a shot of cocaine with the right amount of pills to level it out so I wasn't just tweaked out, and then get on stage and feeding off the audience. And if I could do those, nights were wonderful when I could make them happen. But usually there's one thing or another off, and I'm just a paranoid mess going on stage and, falling off my drum stool and just trying to run off to go shoot up real quick between songs when I'm the drummer, you can't just take off, but I would. It'd just be in a mess. So that went on for, several years and just kind of progressively got worse. But I never got like, it was all, I don't know, it's weird in the music business because the worse you are that way, you almost are, the fans kind of liked having me around. I was the life of the party, so it was, I didn't get fired, and it was like, it doesn't matter how bad it gets, it was just a matter of how I felt when I was up there. When I enjoying it or not enjoying it. I wasn't enjoying it when I was all paranoided out and dope sick and had to run off the set. I mean, I wasn't liking it, but I didn't get fired for it. I mean, it would have been something maybe different in my life if I'd have been reprimanded for that early on and seen that leads to losing your position, but it didn't lose my position, and I could continue doing it, and it just set the precedent for the next 40 years. I mean, I just was a hardcore drug user at that point, and I didn't care really who even knew. That I was just, it all had come so fast and so easy that I figured it'd be like this till I die, and whenever I die, I'll die young and having a great time, and I was fine with that. And of course, it doesn't turn out that way. It doesn't. It starts out feeling good, but it doesn't stay good, and it gets worse in your life. So I spent my life kind of chasing music and doing that. And it just got progressively worse. And when I would stop playing music, and I met my second wife, who I had my son with, and she had a daughter, Brittany, who's my baby, and she was little bitty when I got her. So she's, to me and her, she's just the same as Chris. I mean, she's just my daughter, and I'm her dad to her. I'm the one she knows as her dad. And I really tried to straighten up and do that, but I couldn't, and that marriage fell apart. About 7 years, I think we were married, and then when we did get divorced, drugs played a role through that whole thing, of course, and I just wasn't ready for I shouldn't have, but I was crazy about my kids. I was crazy about her. I hated that I couldn't make this family work, and as bad as I wanted that to happen, that I had just, I mean, the obsession with drugs is a monster that it's hard to describe. It's like, it's just, it takes over everything. It's the number one thing in your life, and you can't stop that from being that way, no matter how bad you want to. Because I wanted to. I wish I could have just pushed a button and that would go away, and I could raise my kids and be a regular guy, whatever that is. But I couldn't do that. So at the end of that marriage and there's so many other stories. During that whole time, I had overdosed and been in the hospital and been in like 13 rehabs and OD'd countless times.
In your 20s.
In my 20s and 30s, and then again I did later. But I did. The biggest event in my life happened after that marriage, or at the end of that marriage. We had just gotten divorced, and I had been through a lot of those things. And that's when my mother, I think, the way I remember it, I had. I was just doing cocaine. It was all about cocaine in my life at that point, and I didn't care who knew. I didn't care what. This is the way it is. If you don't like it, don't be around me. I get it. But that's what I was doing, but I was sick. I was so sick of being like that I was helpless, and I didn't like being so helpless, but I was. And she just asked me if I would, that there's a Christian, and that's the word that got me, was a Christian rehab, because I had been to so many. I could run a rehab at this point. I can tell you everything they say and do, and I could teach those classes. I mean, I know them inside and out, and I wasn't going to another one of those. They don't help, or not me. I'm not saying they don't help anybody, but I always went back. But she said, if we sent you to Florida to this 6-month rehab program. Would you go? And I could not say yes fast enough. I said, absolutely, right? Let's go tonight. Let's leave tonight.
About how old were you?
I was 35, 35, maybe 36. It was in the mid 90s. And like I say, I knew Jesus when I was little, but I had long gone prodigal. And I remember making that decision that I don't want that life. I don't want the Jesus thing and all that. I want an adventure. I made that decision when I was a kid, and boy, did I go after it. And so I went to Florida, and I knew that there was, at that point, the only way, if there was any possible way for this to come to an end and successfully, that it was going to have to be God, because I've tried hard, and I've tried to quit on my own. I've tried all these rehabs. I've tried to quit for other people so I didn't lose them, my parents, my wife, my whoever, and never worked. And that's why I had just given up and said, this is me. This is what I'm going to do till I die, and I don't care anymore. I'm just done caring about it. I'm going to be a dopehead, and that's it. And but I went to Florida, and I got saved, and I mean, he just made it so clear that I didn't have to live like that anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't believe it. I was in shock. I could feel it go away from me, and where the desire, rehabs used to just drive me up to do more dope, because I talk about it constantly. So I'm just always, it just drive me up. It was the first time in my life I knew I met him, and I had submitted wholeheartedly to him, because he was my only hope. And when I did that, it was a feeling I never had before. I didn't know that, life was, I could tell life was just it was beginning now.
Wow.
All that I thought was having life by the tail. I thought having girls and money and cars and drugs and all of that, to me, was the dream to chase. And the more of that you had, the bigger deal you were, and the better it was. And I could see how that was just lame compared to, I knew I had a life now, because he started giving me dreams, and a desire to know him. It just came out of nowhere. I mean, I was filled with the Holy Spirit in a way that I could not even, anybody that's been through the experience, you can't explain it or describe it. All you know is everything's different. I had forgiven everybody who ever did anything to me in my life. I was so grateful that this Messiah, this Savior, was actually changing me and touched me that way, and would take the time to hear me. And I knew how real it was, because those deep down obsessions were gone. They were broken. And that's not possible for me to do myself. I can't do that. I would have done that a long time ago if I could just decide that's how I'm going to be and do it. So I knew it was God, and I knew that Christ had done so much for me and brought me through all those overdoses, all the violence. I mean, man alive, all the gun. I should have been shot so many times or killed someone, because we were violent. I found myself in, gang-ridden areas of Tulsa that no white guy goes to, much less a white guy in a nice car and with money in his pocket and comes out alive. You don't come out alive, and I've had them come at me many times, but I've made it always. I got out of it one way or the other. And, I put guns in their faces. I mean, it's just, somebody should have got killed. It's just crazy and these guys are all probably dead and gone now, because that life is not important to them. They will kill you for anything. So I had made it through all of that, and I knew God's hands the way I made it. And I could just had that sense, an overwhelming sense, that this man has saved me. This man, Jesus, has done this for me. So I was so grateful that I couldn't be mad at anybody. I mean, forgiving people that I had held grudges on, that had hurt my feelings or talked about me, or because my family was full of them. They talked about me. They hated me. My parent, my aunts and uncles and cousins all looked down on me, except when we were at the height of our music deal, and then they all wanted to come be backstage and meet people and be a part of the show. But other than that, they couldn't stand being around me. They didn't want me around, and I don't blame them. I was a mess. I wouldn't want me around either. I mean, I really don't blame them. But all that lifted in an instant. I mean, it was truly remarkable that Jesus Christ, this guy I knew as a child, but totally wrote off, and had fallen in love with. I mean, it was, the submission was total. It was total submission. I gave up, and I just knew that my life was different in a way that it was easy to forgive everybody that ever did anything to me. I was like, oh, they're forgiven. I remember calling my brother and telling him, Charlie, you've got to understand, you've got to do this. You have to come to Christ. I'm telling, and he couldn't believe the way I was talking and acting, and he was saying, well, you sure sound weird. And I said, well, it isn't weird. I'm just telling you, you don't have to be mad at anybody anymore. There's no one to be mad at. None of that. Everything pales in comparison to what he just did for me. I don't care about drugs. I don't care about drinking. I don't care about anything. I just want to get back to my little boy and get him raised upright and get on with things. And he was, so he was touched by that. My brother was, but he didn't, not as touched I'd hope he would be, but he saw the change, and it was very different. So I came back from Florida truly changed. That was my transformation. That's when he transformed my heart, and never been the same since then, although I did go prodigal again. I came back and spent about a year. My son was about 6 years old, and he'd say, Daddy, we go to church. We go to church. He loved church. He'd say, is Jesus going to be there? And I'd say, yeah. We were church hopping, trying to figure out where we want to go. We went all over Tulsa, every church there was, I think.
Now, how old were you when you went to rehab? And
I think I was 35 when I went to Florida,
Okay.
and I was there. Supposed to be a 6-month program, but I missed Chris, and I came back in 3 months. I told my dad, I got to come on. I've been through the rehab thing, and they were starting to repeat a lot of that. I said, Dad, this is different. This isn't. He didn't understand because he's not a Christian, and you almost have to know the Lord to understand that this transformation is just miraculous. I mean, it's something you can't explain. But he knew I was coming back. I said, no, I'm coming back. I'm not asking you. I'm telling you, I'm coming back. So whatever, and pick me up at the airport or don't. But I got to get back to my son. So I did. I got back and moved in with my mom and dad, and they saw the obvious change. I could not stop reading the Bible. I couldn't stop going. If the church doors were open, I was there. It was everything to me to just know him. I didn't know him like I wanted to. I wanted to know who he was and what he wanted me to do. And Chris was just, and my little boy Chris was just, he was just in awe of Jesus. Because I tell, he's my little kid, he believes anything I say. And he saw the excitement in me, and he saw the change. He didn't know I was doing drugs before. I didn't do them around him, but he saw the moody guy, and he's seen me in bad shape. He just didn't know I was in bad shape. I'd try to fake it around him, but he'd seen that. He saw a different dad when I came back from Florida, and he was excited about it, and he couldn't get enough Jesus. It's when he also, that's the time in his life that he's a whole nother testimony that is just miraculous, absolutely miraculous what God did in his life. It's wonderful. So I spent that next year church hopping with Chris. Me and Chris just going to everything we could go to. We just went everywhere and met everybody we could, and it was just me and my little shadow, and we were everywhere. And then to make a long story short, because there's just so many years of my drug addiction and alcoholism that 45 years it's boring to me. I hate even thinking about the story there, because my life is so not anything like that now, that even thinking back on them is like, ugh, just, hard to do. But I had a whole nother, I didn't know it at the time, but a whole nother 20 years coming of back to the needle and, heroin, every pill, every opiate, I found meth and started shooting up meth and, cocaine, and alcohol was really more of a side thing for me because I was all about drugs, but I was definitely an alcoholic. If I didn't have any drugs, I'd drink or do anything to stay off. So I could fake it pretty good with Christopher had met the Lord at that age, and he never forgot that. It was a big part of our life, even when I started drinking again. And I didn't just go straight to shooting up. I started drinking wine like I'm a grown man. I can have a glass of wine, but I started quickly drinking more. It was obvious I'm not somebody that should be drinking. But God, when he touches you, even though you start drifting off, he never goes away.
Yeah.
It was never the same again through the whole next 20 years of addiction. And there was a lot more overdoses to come, and some of the worst that I ended up, I spent every penny I ever had, and inheritance, even just like the Bible talks about, the prodigal spent his inheritance. I did all of that, and ended up homeless. And when I was in my late 40s, I was living under a bridge in Tulsa. So I'd come from this extreme of, having, to me, the world by the tail. I mean, I had everything that a guy could imagine. And now I was living under the bridge. My parents were dead at that point. They had passed away. I had moved back with them and helped them pass away, which is a whole nother part of the story, but still a drug addict. But I was able to get on methadone and not drink or anything, but just taking methadone. I was always high, methadone's worse than heroin. But so I helped them for 10 years while they died, basically, is what I was helping them do. My mom had Alzheimer's. My dad he just withered away. And then at the end of their deal, I ended up selling that farm and, just had another probably 5 years of the worst I've ever been at that point. I don't know how I lived through any of that. I'd OD almost every other day, it seems like. I mean, just go down and I didn't know what was happening. I was gone, I was done. And then my brother died, and it just went worse. It just was like, I'm done. I just don't care. So it was, and I remember being down to like, I don't know, $60,000 in my account, and which, I didn't have any money coming. There's no one knocking on my door to come play now, and things were bad. And I remember thinking man, I'm broke, and you've got to stop. And so then it would start the thinking of, okay, I'll buy one more ounce of Coke or one more ounce of meth, do that, and then I'm done. I can't spend any more money. I got to go figure something out because I'm getting down to it. Well, that train of thought just kept coming, and I'm in it at the time. But next thing I know, I was done. It was all gone, and I was even like, I don't know, 20,000 in the hole at the bank, and they just said, we'll just write it off. Because I was like, move money from another account into this. And I was trying to do what I'd always thought I could do, and so I realized I was done. I was broke. All my lights went out at the house. It was winter. I had never been like that before. I didn't know what that was like. I was out of food, out of everything. I mean, my parents were dead. My brother was dead, and my friends, they'd never seen me like that. My teeth were falling out by that point, and I wouldn't go around people. So I was ashamed, and at that point of being around anybody that knew me when, and so I was done. I was homeless. That was it. I just was homeless at that point, and ended up downtown Tulsa I had come up here to Joplin, actually, to my Aunt Kay's for a short time, but I was such a mess that she couldn't have handled that at that time. I wasn't ready I didn't know, I was just a mess. And so I ended up going back to Tulsa and living under a bridge for, I don't know how long, some months, until I finally got into a rehab, the Salvation Army. And it was when that happened, I had prayed and told the Lord, I had picked out a place, a bridge that I was going to jump off onto this train, in front of a train that comes. I had scoped it out. I knew when the train came. It's downtown Tulsa. It runs right under this big bridge. It's downtown. And I was just done. I wasn't going to live like that. I didn't know how to be homeless. I'm not a beggar. I mean, some of those people run around down there like they're on holiday camping or something. I mean, that's just their life. And they seem to be fine with that. And I wasn't one of them. I was scared. I was desperate. I didn't know what to do. I didn't have any. I would literally stand under a bridge, and I wanted to go some direction, but I had nothing to go to in any direction. So I'd just stand there all day and just stand there. And people would walk way around me because I hadn't showered in a month and no teeth and all gross, just very dirty. It was hard to believe that I couldn't believe I had come to that this was happening. So that was a big moment in my life when I got into, like I said, I was praying to God that this is the day. You either need to save me, show me something, or I'm done. And it wasn't a threat to God. It wasn't anything. It was just that I was done, and I just wanted Him to have one more shot at. If you want it, if you don't want it, then I get it. I'm worthless. And I felt I'd let Him down and everybody else down, including everybody, and all of us. And the next day, I was sitting on the street in front of Salvation Army, and they called my name over the loudspeaker to come talk to this counselor in the building. That I was next on the list. I've been sitting there for weeks trying to, and during those times that I was sitting trying to get into a shelter or get in somewhere to kill time, I would go get my tetanus shot or go get because they have their offices right there for the homeless to go get your shots and have some sort of physical done and do all these different things. But I was just doing them because I didn't have anything to do. I thought I may as well go get a TB shot and get, whatever, all the shots, get everything. And my teeth obviously were giving me trouble. They had all broken off and it looked like I had no teeth, but the roots were all in, but they infected, and I was just in bad shape. And so she called me into the office, and I went in and sat down with her, and she was going to allow me to get a bed finally inside, so I didn't have to sleep outside, and which downtown Tulsa can be quite a daunting task. There's a lot of killings, a lot of stuff going on all around you. You just have to get used to it and be a part of it, be in the middle of it. So I wanted the bed, and then I was leaving her. It was a Thursday, and we talked for a little while, and she got me where I was going to have a bed that night, and I just was leaving, and I said, "Is there any kind of rehabs for anybody?" And she said, "Are you a drug addict?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Yes," and I said, I desperately need help." And she said, "Let me call. It's called the ARC, Adult Rehabilitation Center." She said, "Let me call the ARC, but they don't take people. They won't take them till Monday." And I already planned on ending my life before Monday. It was going to be, God was either going to show, that was the day that I was going to do it, that day when she called me in. And she said, "Well, you have to have she said, "They got a long list of stuff you've got to get done before they can take you." And so she started going down this list. And during that time I'd waited out there and done all those things, everything got done. I had done it all. which of course is God. I mean, he was getting me ready. I didn't know it at the time. I was just killing time trying to do stuff. But she read down this list, and it was everything just check, 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 check. She goes, well, you've done all of those. And she said, but they don't take anyone on Thursday, so it'll be Monday. And I just wasn't going to wait. I was like, no, okay. I mean, I said okay to her, but she said, well, let me call. And she did, and the lady, I can't remember her name now, but answered the phone, and she said, I'll tell you what. She said, we don't check in after Thursday, but you tell him to be here at 6 o'clock Friday morning, which was the next day. So I changed bridges. I moved to a bridge closer to Salvation Army because the sun always wakes us up. I knew I could be there. And she said, we'll go ahead and see about getting him in. So, I mean, God just moved. And all of a sudden I was in this place that I got a set of teeth. I started playing music again. They had a killer blues band, except the drummer was not very good. And I didn't want to take his place because I know what it's like to be him. And he's playing with these great musicians, and he never had a chance like that before. But they found out that I had been a musician, and that started getting around. And so I started kind of helping him do some things. And the next thing I know, the band had asked me to play, if I would play do a little concert for the guys, and I said, well, I'll do a couple songs. It was the major, the guitar player, fantastic guitar player, was our major. He was the one that ran that place. And I said, well, I'll come up for a song, maybe 2 songs. I said, but that's it, because I didn't want to take his place. I had gotten to really like him, and I wanted to help him flourish. I remember being like that. And we just killed it. They weren't used to a drummer like that, so the whole band was elevated, kind of. Not that I'm so great, but compared to a beginner, they got to feel more of how it is supposed to be. And that was it. I was off, and he just said, well, okay, our new drummer, Chris, and everybody was just, the thought Elvis came into town, the way those guys, my fellow drug addicts, went off because they had heard me talk a little about music, but they didn't even believe me. They just were like, whatever, everybody's got a story. I mean, because everybody does in that place. And so they got to see, so he just announced that. I felt horrible for my buddy, and I told him I'm sorry, and he said, no. He said, it's okay. He said, I get to watch. I want to watch and learn. And so I was off doing music again with them, and we played all over the country. We went to raise money we'd go to these $1 million dinners, and we were the entertainment. And so all of a sudden I had teeth again. I had started eating. Drugs were gone. Alcohol I didn't care about that. And I mean, it was just, I was healthy again. All of a sudden I looked good again. I was healthy again. I was playing music, which I never thought I'd play again, with some of the best players I've ever played with, and clean and sober. And so for the next year, life just, God brought me to, it was back to just God and music and the things that he was giving me, all these things back that I had lost. And then I went off the rails one more time, had to go again. It wasn't one more time, but I ended up back on cocaine about 1.5 years into that. It was a 6-month program, if I remember right, and I was there 1.5 years. I just didn't want to leave. I mean, I was so happy and so doing it, but I ended up on drugs again. It's just, it's an awful beast, drugs are. And so I ended up homeless again because he had to let me go out of there. Obviously, I couldn't be at a rehab place, and I had blown it with all that. So I was back on the street again, and then prison. I ended up in prison, and I was on the run at that point. I had been, because I had gone to that rehab, and the major had gone to court with me, and on my behalf, they put, I had a bunch of drug charges at that point, and I was supposed to go to prison, but they would put it off, and were going to put me, I was going to get to do just drug court or something different and get out of it. And but then I was on the run after that. I had a bunch of charges, manufacturing charges, and
were you making meth?
yeah.
Yeah.
And So there I went. I mean, I just went doing what I know to do, and me and a guy, he had a car, so you don't feel really homeless if you're in a car. So, I mean, homeless, I've been homeless. I know what it's like to have nothing and nowhere. So we just ran around to casinos and doing drugs until he went down a wrong way down a one way. And I just said, well, I'll see you, because I know I'm on the run, and he knew that. And so that was it. They got me, and it was the best. It was really, the weight was off my shoulders. I was sick of being back at it. I mean, I hated that I did drugs when I did drugs by that point, even though they still could get me out of I'd feel good, maybe the rush of it, and then that would wear off, and then but 99.9% of the time, I hated myself. I hated that I threw away everything. I finally had something again and had thrown it away, and it was just over and over doing that. So I hated myself and just miserable, and so prison was right up my alley. As a matter of fact, they weren't going to send me to prison. They got me, put me in jail, sent me to Pawhuska, and when I went to court, the judge was going to let me do drug court, but I didn't have a car. I wasn't going to jump through any more hoops for anybody. I'd have to find a ride all the time to get to do that. It was just more than I could deal with. And I told them, don't let me walk out of here, because I won't come back. I won't be back. You'll have to come get me again, and I don't want that to happen. So let's just sentence me, let me get to prison and get this over with and be done. And they did. So that's kind of how it went. I was tired, and I wasn't even negotiating anymore. I don't care how many years you give me, just let's do it. So I got 10 years, and I think because I had said that and stood up that way, that judge appreciated my honesty, and he gave me 7.5 years when I thought, because we had settled on 10, and I looked at my lawyer, and he just said, just shake your head yes. I said, when he said 7.5, it seemed like a deal. So I went and did my prison time, and
How old were you when you went in?
47. I was 52 when I got out. And when I got out, my Aunt Kay, my little Aunt Kay, wanted me to come here to Joplin. And I told her no, that I got myself in this hole, and I want to dig myself, I'll get out of it. And I got into a place called Exodus House through the church I was going to in the penitentiary, and they had accepted me into this program when I get out of prison to come live at this place, and I go to church and serve the church, and that all sounded great. And of course I get there, and my next door neighbor happens to be a guy that was on my yard. He's a guy I know, and he's got a great big bag of meth. And I was like, oh no, and he goes, here, man, and just threw it to me, and I went next door to my place and shot up and ended up kicked out of there, and on the street again, and I went to a dope guy's house. It's the only place I knew to go, but I looked like Walking Dead man again, and definitely was heading back to prison, or because I was in bad company. Now it's ex-con company. These guys are, a whole different crowd of guys. I get along with them, but they're definitely trouble. All of them are going to go back. The recidivism rate is like 85%, and I was with the 85% that are going back. So I knew I was in trouble, and I called my Aunt Kay and I said, do you still want me to come to Joplin? And she flew to Tulsa. She could not get there fast enough to get me, and brought me back up here, and I played around. For a year, I looked for work and couldn't find work, and we kept a book, and I don't know how many things I had in there. My aunt would have to probably tell you, but 30 or 40 or 50, maybe even, jobs that I had been to and turned down for, and I was keeping a log of them. And so I got depressed and felt like even when I'm trying, because I really was trying with everything I had. And so I got depressed, and I did what I do and just started doing meth again. And so I went for a couple of years of drinking and meth. And in comparison to some of the places I had been before, I guess it wasn't, but it was, I was going right back down the tubes. I was having, I guess, nightmares about some of the stuff, some things. I would wake up tearing her room to pieces, my bedroom at her house. And I was just, I guess I was just fresh enough out of me, because it's a really violent place, and life is different in a way that, unless you've been there, it's almost like going to war with somebody.
Do you mind to talk about prison a little
No, I don't mind talking about it.
So explain it to somebody that's never been to prison.
Everything is, prison politics are, you've got to watch when you get on a yard how you look. You got to watch how you carry yourself. You have to watch eye contact. You have to watch. There are certain words that if you say there, you may have grown up with calling each other these words, and I won't repeat them. As kids, oh, you big blah. And so, but if you say that there, you get killed. They'll kill you for it. I mean, it's especially two words, and anybody that's been there knows what I'm talking about. So you have to learn all of these things. There's just, you have to fight. You better fight. If you don't fight, they'll all come after you. So when you get on a yard, if somebody challenges you, and many times they do, it's called a heart check. They'll come at you to see what you're made of. And if you don't fight, these are scary people. They don't send some punk at you. They send a great big tatted out guy with a life sentence that doesn't mind killing you, because but a heart check usually will just beat down to the ground. When you can't get up, they'll stop it, instead of killing each other. So it's not bad, but it certainly tells you, it'll let you know if you're a fighter or not. So yeah, I mean, it's that lifestyle. It's just it's a new world there, and there's people that are, predators and prey. I mean, it's just what it is, and it's raw, and races are separated. But I did get along with every race, but the hardest ones were the white guys, because they didn't like that I'd get along with other people. They didn't want me to be. They were trying to recruit me into that, and I told all of them I wasn't going to be affiliated. I'm not going with anybody. I'm not going to hate people just because you want me to, and it's just not going to happen. But so it turns out that the guy that he was UAB, United Aryan Brotherhood. He was their top guy. He ran the yard. Nobody killed anybody or did anything or beat anyone down, did anything without his permission. And him and the warden were friends. And the warden had told him about my music background. That I guess Derek talked to the warden about everybody, I'm sure, because he knew everything about everyone on that yard. And so for a long time, he'd pull up by my bunk and say, "You mind if I pull up a chair in your driveway," which is our little spot by the bunk. And I wouldn't let him. I just said, "No." I said, I don't need you over here. I'm not interested. But he's a big, scary dude. I've got pictures of him, and I love him. He's passed away now, unfortunately, but at the time, I didn't know him. You just know his reputation and know who he is and the kind of power he had there. So very scary individual. And every day he would come ask me if he could pull up and sit down. And I knew what they do. They schmooze you, they talk, they try to get you in. And then, I didn't want to affiliate it. I didn't want it. And I just told him, look, I'm not going in with anybody on anything. And you do whatever you're going to do to me, because I'm not doing it. And so I think it was maybe a day or two after one of those driveway calls, and I was in the shower, which is a very questionable place in prison to be. There's a lot of problems can happen in the shower. But he was in there, and I was in there, and it's a story you may have to even cut the story. I don't know, but it's how me and him became friends. You keep your eyes away from, I mean, you don't look at a guy, even you just make sure that you're looking at the wall or looking down, or no eye contact, because it gets weird quick. And I was shampooing my hair, I remember, and I just turned around and he was just standing right there next to me, and he was sleeved out in a place that you wouldn't normally think anybody would be sleeved out, put it that way. Freaked me out. So I got done after the shower and I was drying off, and I said, look, man, so I asked him about it. I said, what is up with that? And he said, nobody would do that to you. You kidding me? You're going to ask me about something like that? And I said, I'm sorry, I was just turning around. But I said, what's the deal? And he just started laughing that I had the either ignorance to say something or, the kahunas to say something. But either way, I had asked, and he thought that was hilarious. And we became best friends, and he kept me safe on the yard. Just knowing him, nobody was going to mess with me ever for any reason whatsoever. And it was probably another God thing that God put me in touch with this guy. And I was in that atmosphere, in that political climate, I was safe. And I told him I didn't want drugs around me and doing all that. So he had the blacks, the Mexicans, the Indians, everybody tell their drug dealers don't hit up on him. Don't mess with him, because, you have a weak moment and they're always asking you for it. It's easy to get in it. So I ended up, he was probably my best friend and throughout prison, and you just learned the prison politics from there. It's just a real brutal place. You're going to see a lot of sexual things you don't want to see, and people are going to try on me, and they do from time to time, and you have to handle that in a certain way, and you become accustomed to that kind of life, which is, that's what prison's like. I don't advocate it for anybody, but it saved my life. And I was able to gain respect from people, the right people there on the yard, just my personality, I guess, because it was just, it wasn't like I was a big brute. I was 50 years old, and these guys are in their prime. So, I mean, it wasn't that. It was just, I did somehow, those people, the right people respected me and liked me, and so I had the run of the play. I could do whatever I wanted, and nobody was going to mess with me or bother me. So that was prison, and I did start doing drugs again in prison, finally, just because a place to do drugs, you've got, one cell over's heroin, the next another cell over's meth, cocaine's across the deal. You've got everything right there constantly, all the time. Huh. The easiest place in the world to kill somebody or get back on dope, it's just part of daily life. It's just everywhere. And you get used to that atmosphere, and I did, and I ended up back on it again, so I came out messed up. And that's when I say I got kicked out of that Exodus house, and that's when my aunt brought me up here. I was in that shape and had come back up here, and I was having nightmares about things and waking up. She's just a little bitty thing. She's, I don't know, not even 5 feet, I don't think, 4'11" or something. And, I was tearing the room up. I'd wake up fighting, because I did wake up fighting there a lot. That's what you do. You better be fighting. And so I was tearing the room up, and she'd be hugging me, and I'd realize it was her. She was the bravest little woman, and because I was a mess and a handful, and she was bound and determined to make sure that I find myself again. And she didn't let go. And she's a little pit bull, and she had a hold of me, and she wouldn't let me go. So I did go for a few more years of doing drugs, and made it hard on her because I was depressed. I was really trying to get a job, and I wanted to be the clean, straight guy that gets up in the morning, goes to work, has a paycheck, and start my life over again, start doing something good, but nobody would hire me. I just couldn't get hired. And so, yeah, I stayed in Joplin. And then the best part of the whole story is I knew where to go to get back right. And that was the first time since all of this had begun, even my times with God, that I just on my own just submitted myself to Him. I was still drinking, but I was reading the Bible constantly. I wanted to know if it was okay if I drank, or if it was okay if I smoked weed. Is it okay if I just don't shoot up? And if I mean, I was in that bad a shape, and I just devoured the Bible looking for loopholes, actually, is what I was doing, hoping that I could find it some way that I can still go to heaven, but and be drunk and or be high. But he's pretty clear about drunkards, and there are no loopholes. But he is also remarkably graceful that if you'll give it, just pull the trigger, let it go, and give it to him. And I didn't know what that ever meant really before, but I did do that, and he absolutely. It was a submission like it was in the 90s when I gave myself to him, except this time I didn't. It was all that past was. It was permanent, and I knew it was permanent. I knew I was never going to do this stuff again. That it was, and I was doing it all for myself. It was just I wanted to serve him. He put a serving heart in me. He put, and it was all I had to do was, I didn't have to be perfect, but in submission, when you submit yourself to him, he knows we're not going to have perfect obedience, but your desire to have perfect obedience, he blesses. And if you set the bar way up here and you're starting down here, as you may not hit that bar anytime soon, and probably haven't hit it yet, but where you do get to is just a blessing that. So he was sanctifying me, and I could feel the layers being peeled off, and it was one thing after another. But I lived not far from where I live right now with my wife, and it was all by myself. This was not. Nobody was making me do it. There wasn't anyone making me do this. It was just I wanted to find him. I wanted to be with him, and the submission is total when you are beat down that hard. It's unfortunate that some of us have to get beat down that hard and go through, and that's just a quick part of the life. I mean, there was so much more and harder even stories than anything I said, but when you're beat down that far, where it's either death or him, one of the two. I mean, for me, it was that. I was done, and that kind of submission changed everything again. He just again picked me up on my feet, put me on my feet. I knew I needed church. I need church. I mean, I just need church. I need someone around me. And, James River was right down the street, and I'd go by it. I went to several churches, and when I walked in there, I just felt at ease. I could take a big breath, and it was, he just started changing my life. I was going to church on Sunday, but not any of the rest of the week. I was reading the Bible every day. I couldn't get enough trying to figure out who I am in him and who he is to me and who is he, and, really wanting that relationship with him. And I was still smoking weed, because it just seemed to me that wasn't even a drug. To me, that was like, well, I'm not drinking, I'm not shooting, I'm not doing dope, but just smoking weed. And so I was kind of, the last thing I was doing was looking for loopholes with that. And the Bible doesn't specifically mention marijuana. So I thought, well, okay, he doesn't care about that. But I was convicted on that. He let me know that, I'm killing, because I was alone. I didn't like being lonely. It helped me eat, sleep at night. It helped the boredom. I'd come home and I could get high and watch a movie and not be just bored to death all night. And so that's kind of how I justified it. And I was talking to my son actually one day, and he didn't know I was still smoking weed. He thought I had quit, because I had gone to live with him for a while when I was suicidal at the end of this stuff. So he didn't know that, and I told him, I said, well, I still get high. I said, I still smoke a bowl every now and then. And he said, why? And I told him the same reasons I just said. And he said, well, I understand that. And so we talked for a little bit, and he got off the phone, and then he called me back. And he goes, Dad, he said, listen, he said, do you think that it's possible that God will use that boredom and to get you out of your seat and to put you somewhere where you won't be bored, where you'll do something, get out of your box, and instead of just sitting there, you might sit there the next 10 years content and sitting in your chair. He said, God will use that boredom, and it just made perfect sense to me. So I got up and went in my cabinet and got all my weed stuff. I had just gotten a new bag of weed too, and I wouldn't even give it to anybody because I'd been convicted for this for a while. And I threw all my paraphernalia away and my weed and everything I had. I just bagged up and walked out and put it in the dumpster and went to church that Wednesday. And I went a couple times and was liking church fine, but it wasn't, I was needing to be around. So a program called Living Free at church is where things really started helping me, because I still saw women the way I did when I was a musician, and they were more sexual objects to me than, I've always loved girls. I really do. I was raised by a grandmother and a mother and aunts, and I've had wonderful women around me all my life, so I've always really enjoyed. I've had a lot of girlfriends that are just my friends to this day, and I just like girls. I think they're fun to be around, but also I had an issue with lust. I'm trying to obey God, and I know better than I know porn, and I had gotten myself in a position where I wouldn't go to anywhere to find an actual girl, but then pornography's always there, and it was just a big struggle. It was a major struggle, and it's very heartsick, painful when you're trying to obey the one you love, and he's trying to help me, and so now I'm struggling with that. So it got me out of my chair, got me going to church on Wednesday, and I got in this program, Living Free, and of course, my reason for doing that, my issue, this program, you come with whatever issue you have, and that's what that program's about, is helping each other through. Might be depression, might be anxiety, it might be drug addiction, it might be whatever. Mine was lust at this point. I was struggling with lust. And so he sets me at a table full of girls. It was me and the girls, and all pretty girls. And I'm like, Lord, really? This is how we're going to do this. Well, by the time a few weeks had gone by and I had gotten to know all these girls, their lives, and heard their personal stories and connected with them, I was just seeing these beautiful sisters that I wasn't thinking like I was when I came in there. So again, he just does what you don't expect. I thought I'd get with some guys that would be mentors that have been through this issue, and they've got some great advice for me, and they're going to lead me out of this place. And that's not how it was. He put me with a bunch of girls, and for the next several months, I was just surrounded by girls at that church, and everything changed there. I met my beautiful wife there, and she can't stand marijuana. She can't stand the smell of it. The things that God had prepared me for, he would not have brought me her if I hadn't dealt with the lust issues, if I hadn't put away the marijuana. She just absolutely would rather be sprayed in the face by a skunk than smell weed. She hates it. And so that's something that would have kept us from being together, I think, with her. If I was still doing that. But God had removed all these things from my life, yet again put me on my feet and got me ready for, and I was working, and I was a hard worker. I was doing my job and paying my way and doing good. I was just rebuilding my life. And he brought this woman into my life that all of those things, and she was in the same mode that I was in as far as seeking God, and she was had gone through some things in her life that she was trying to overcome, and I mean, she was just truly seeking him. It wasn't looking for this or that or the other. She was, okay, she was just like me, seeking him and wanting to serve him. And so he brought her into my life, and we've been married now we dated, it was quick. It was slow to me. It took about 6 or 7 months to get her married off to me, but for her it was lightning speed, and she was like, oh wait, we need a lightning speed for her, but it was slow for me. I had to scoop her up because guys were coming out of the woodwork and I wasn't going to have it. So I said, you're getting wooed, and the wooing is on. And I did, and I can't even, it's hard to describe where God took me from and has placed me now. When he says that seek ye first the kingdom of God and all these, and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. In the Bible, that's talking about material things, because he's talking about food. The verses previous to that are talking about food, and the birds have feathers, how they're dressed, and even Solomon wasn't dressed. But it's more than, I believe that it's spiritual. I mean, all of these things will be added unto you. He added a wife back in my life. My kids completely trust and look forward to me again. Our grandkids are just crazy about us, and our family just got so united, and everything just came together in a supernatural way that was just unmistakable. He was giving me back all those things I lost, and in a way that I've never had before. My wife and I I never had a best friend be my wife before. And we've kept him at the center of our marriage, and we're just ecstatic. We're like young high school kids in love for the first time. We get to do this again, when neither one of us thought this was ever going to be a part of our life again. So God brings you all the way when you seek him out, but it's when you just seek him. Don't seek him for a wife. Don't seek him, why am I a drunk? Don't seek, why am I a drug addict? Don't seek, pour this to me. Why did this happen to me? Why did I lose this? Why did I do that? Why didn't this dream come true? You said you'd give me anything in my heart, and why didn't that happen? If you let all of that go, let it just go away and seek him. Get to know him. Just seek him, because he means it when he says, seek me first. Seek the kingdom of his righteousness and his kingdom with no other agenda. Just seek him. And all of those things those answers you're looking for will come.
Wow.
He'll bring them to you. He'll bring them to you when you least expect it. You'll just look back on a year's time when you've not been looking for why was I this way or why, but you'll have all those answers. He'll just bring them to you. And he will, if your heart's genuine and you're truly just loving him and wanting to know him and build that relationship, he'll put your life back together. I could never have imagined 5 years ago that I'd be where I am today. Could never have imagined it. Neither could my wife. Yeah. We both are just shocked at when he moved, he moved. I mean, it's like you pray for things and you seek him and you're trying to better yourself and be closer to God, and nothing seems to be happening sometimes. Long periods of time can go when it seems like, okay, God, are you hearing me? Or, I mean, is anything happening? Because I just am plateaued out here. Seems like this is it. And then he busts a move. But you can see that he's preparing you the whole time.
Yeah.
And then when he busts a move on you, he busts a move and it happens quick. And life just flip-flopped. And so we're hanging on to him with everything we have and each other. We're so grateful. So that's enough of my story.
If you think of what was your lowest point in life, what comes to mind?
Probably when I was homeless,
Yeah.
because my brother had died and I didn't have any, my kids were old enough to that point to know what a loser their dad had become. And my mom and dad were dead. My brother was dead. Nobody wanted to deal with me anymore at that point, and I had nothing. I mean, nothing. I had a little red bag and I think a pair of underwear and maybe some shirt that someone gave me on the street in it, and that was about it. And just scared. I knew it was over, and I didn't see a way out of that. I didn't see any way out of that. I couldn't go get a job. When people tell a homeless guy, why don't you get a job? I couldn't get a job. I didn't have a license, a car, a shower. I didn't have anything. I didn't have any teeth. I was sick. I was skinny. I was dying. I mean, I was just walking dead. So that would be probably at least one of them, at least hardest part.
If you could go back and talk to yourself at that point, what would you tell yourself?
At that point, hang on. Even though I couldn't see any way out, God already knew all of this. He knew that from that moment, there would be this moment and everything in between, and he knows what's going to happen next. And I would have said, don't give up, because I was giving up. I was definitely giving up. I was done. And I had seen both extremes. I had seen living, the high life, and I had seen living under a bridge, and I didn't like under a bridge, and I didn't like the high life either, because it was worthless. I don't bring any glory to that, chasing women and cars and drugs and all that rock and roll lifestyle. Zero glory. It's a worthless way to live. The only good thing about that lifestyle is that it brought me to God. It brought me to my knees and brought me to God. That's the only good thing that comes out of that. All the rest of that, I don't want anyone to think that I glorify that or name drop some of these people that I had known or any of that, because there's a lot of them, and I try not to even say their names because I don't want anyone to think that I'm glorifying that part of my life. The part to glorify is now. It's anybody that's in that situation, that's what I would say to them. Don't give up. Do not give up. And every drug addict says this to anybody who's come out on the other side like this. I have so many brothers and sisters, drug addict brothers and sisters who've made it out of that and into this life with the Lord. And I think all of us would agree to tell our old self and anybody else, don't give up.
Yeah.
Because you sure want to.
Yeah.
A simple message, but it's the most profound. And unfortunately, most people do give up at some point. And
yeah.
So I don't know why some of us get to make it and some don't. I don't know. But don't give up.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that are actively really fighting addiction, trying to get free. What do you tell somebody that's really struggling with an addiction?
There's just no other way to go than Jesus for me or for, I know what he'll do. I know what he'll do. And I know he's waiting. His arms are wide open. And it's easy to just say that. And somebody watching this and seeing me, I may still be ugly, but I'm healthy. And they're not seeing the one that I talked about before. That guy, if you saw him and then now, maybe you'd more understand that, wow, something happened. And it wasn't, and that's Christ. And it's exciting. It's an exciting life. I know what you're thinking is that, oh man, there'll be no more drinking, no more drugs, no more girls, no more this, no more that. I can't do this. It's all rules. He didn't like that.
Yeah.
It's an amazing life. When he sets you free of those things, you don't miss them anymore. They're just gone. They're gone. I mean, he takes them away from you. They're gone, and he replaces them with a kind of a joy and depth in your heart that you didn't even know you had.
Yeah.
And man, don't give up hope. I don't care who you are, where you are, how bad you are. I've got track marks from my head to my toe, and 45 years of hardcore drug addiction, alcoholism, and don't give up. He can even take that. He did it, and I can testify on a mountaintop what he can do. I can show you my wife. She probably won't come over here, but she's standing right off to the side, the cutest, sweetest, God-fearing, wonderful woman that you never would think in a million years would even look at me after being through all of that. And don't give up. God will put you in a place that you truly can't imagine.
Amen.
if you just truly seek him out.
Amen.
Just go looking for him. He won't hide.
That's so good.
Yeah, he doesn't hide.
Well, there's going to be people that are watching this that are actively seeking God, that are lost, that are fighting addiction. And Revelation 12:11 tells us that we overcome the enemy by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm doing this because I know that these testimonies are going to be used of God to set people free. So with that in mind, I'm going to ask that you close us, and I would like for you to pray for those listening to your testimony, that God would do the same in lives.
Oh,
that
absolutely.
Yeah.
Holy Father, I just am so grateful, Lord, that you brought me to this place and that we get a chance, Lord, at life that is indescribable, Father God, through you. I lift up, Lord, these addicts that are still using, Father, that are searching, that have a hole in their heart that they don't know how to fill other than with substances, Father God, that their lives are out of control and they feel hopeless. Because it's in that hopeless feeling, Father God, that you move, that you show yourself. And Father, I pray for these I pray, Lord, that they would hit a wall so hard that they fall to their knees and have to look up, Father God, because you are there. And Lord, I just lift them up to be encouraged. When your word says that when we are weak, you are strong, Father, I pray that you show that to them, that they see that somebody hearing this right now who feels like giving up, Father God, that you're touching them, that you are drawing them to you right now, Father, that you are lifting them up. And Father, I pray with all my heart, Lord, that you do for them what you did for me, Lord, so I can hear their testimony, because I look forward to it, and it all to bring glory to your holy name, Father God. And I just pray this and all things always in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Okay.
Love you, brother.
Love you too. That was fun.